Hey everybody, welcome to the Extra Point Show this week.
What's up, everybody? Thanks for joining us.
Gonna start this show off, with a little bit of on a somber note. Always rough when we have to start the episodes this way. Unfortunately, on Saturday we lost former Ohio State Buckeyes great and former Washington Redskin first round pick Dwayne Haskins in a tragic accident.
Yeah, definitely some sad news. I mean, I know I may have been critical of him in the past in terms of his playing ability on the field, but those kinds of things really aren't worth mentioning when somebody
Right.
dies randomly, especially something like this. Like,
Exactly.
the Adam Schefter comment that he put out, whether or
Yeah.
not the statement is accurate or not, it's
Yeah.
really not the point. Like, you
Yeah.
don't need to say those kinds of things when
Yeah.
something like this happens.
And I have the tweet that Schefter put up before, and then he went and he actually changed his tweet after the fact and took out the performance based part. But yeah, actually, because this has been a topic on a lot of Washington fans' minds, and just a lot of football fans' minds in general, since this has happened just on Saturday, so just a couple days ago. But I actually went back and watched the footage from his first ever win from 2019 against the Lions. Remember that game when they beat the Lions 19-16, and he
Yeah.
So that was pretty cool. And then that's like the moment where he got his phone and he was like taking the selfies with the fans after the game. So it's pretty
Oh,
cool to
yeah,
like
yeah,
get to
yeah.
like relive that moment, like probably his best like career moment ever. Obviously a promising young career ended too short. Who knows what would have happened in Pittsburgh? Maybe he would have caught on. Obviously the Pittsburgh quarterback room was wide open now with
Yeah, and
Ben
he was
retiring.
still so young. I mean,
Yeah,
even if he
24,
had a bit of a rocky
24.
start in the NFL, I know
Yeah,
we're not trying to focus on that, but you never know where he would have, gone. With more time to learn, and he went to another team, like
he
he
could
could
have
have
been
had some
great.
success.
And that's what I was gonna say. Some of the throws that he made in that game, like he definitely showed that arm strength. I mean,
Yeah, he has a good arm. He definitely
yeah,
does.
yeah. I mean,
Or I'm
in
sorry, I guess he did. Oh man.
yeah,
Ugh.
yeah, yeah. And yeah, I mean, in this one season, he was legendary at Ohio State. 50 touchdowns to 8
Hmm.
interceptions. I mean, it was just an unreal season. And I mean, yeah,
Yeah,
definitely
if you're gonna mention him, I would say that would be the thing to say, like Ohio State Buckeye legend. Like
Buckeye legend.
that.
Yeah,
That's like the
absolutely.
biggest because yeah,
Yeah,
that's what I would go with.
yeah, yeah, definitely. But thoughts and prayers go out to his family, and obviously in a very rough time that they're going through.
I'm not
Um,
sure if we mentioned what the details were of
oh no, I
what
don't think we
happened,
did.
but
Yeah,
he was apparently walking down. I think it said he ran out of gas or something in a rental vehicle, and he was trying to cross the highway, and a truck hit him.
yeah,
So
yeah, definitely. I know it was like around 7 a.m., like a little before 7, so it probably was a little bit dark out. So I would imagine that the
yeah,
visibility
that could
wasn't
be.
good. But
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, hopefully, yeah. Obviously, you hate to see something like that, and like I said, at just 24 years old, definitely, definitely rough.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, in other news, it's kind of changing of the guard in Tampa. There was kind of this shocked me honestly because Bruce Arians, unexpected retirement, and what shocked me about this is obviously Bruce Arians is old as hell. That's not shocking. I'm not shocked
Yeah.
that he retired, but it's the timing of it. He didn't
Hmm.
retire right after the season. He retires in like April, early April.
And after Tom Brady decides that he's going to come back,
Yeah,
so I would have thought before that happening, maybe he was like, "All right, you know what? I'm done. I'm good."
yeah.
But once with Tom coming back, you would think, I don't know, at least got one more year in him. But
Yeah, yeah, you would think. Now, I mean, I've got this interesting theory now. I mean, I might just be full of shit on this, but I'm thinking that basically behind closed doors without Bruce Arians' knowledge, Tom Brady went to Buccaneers management and was like, "Listen, it's me or Bruce." And I don't you remember we talked about it earlier in one of the earlier shows where Bruce was out with some kind of treatment earlier in the season, and Tom and Byron Leftwich would be working on the Byron, the offensive coordinator, would be working on the weekly game plan, and Bruce Arians would come back in on Saturday and put the red pen through a lot of it and just undermine a lot of the work that they'd done. So
yeah,
I've got this theory that Tom without Bruce's knowledge, went to the Buccaneers management, their GM and their owner, and was like, "Listen, it's me or him. You know, it's either going to be, I'm if you want me to come back, I want a new coach." And they got Todd Bowles. He's going to be the one taking over, who has previous head coaching experience. He was the coach of the Jets from 2015 to 2018. Established a record of 24-40. But Todd Bowles definitely seems like the kind of guy that's just going to stick to the defense and leave Byron Leftwich and Tom Brady alone.
I think you're probably completely right, because Tom Brady is the type of quarterback and player that cannot be told what to do exactly.
I mean, you're watching a documentary right now.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, they said that at one point. He said, if a coach goes into it with the mentality that he's going to just tell Tom Brady what to do and how to run things,
good luck.
That's never going to happen. It's just not going. The team's not going to do well because that's just not going to happen.
Tough titties, baby.
So with the talk about Bruce Arians and him having the issues that they had, you're probably exactly right. Yeah. Tom was probably like, hey, I'm willing to stay, but I need to be able to have control, because Tom is almost like a coach in himself.
Yeah. Tom
he is just a quarterback.
Tom puts out the little tweet about BA. He's like, "Oh, Bruce, it's nice working with you. You're a great guy," and like he always does. It's
of course.
But yeah. I mean, I think that's what happened, and obviously, Bruce Arians is a good coach, but I mean, it's if you could have Tom Brady or Bruce Arians, I think that's a pretty easy choice to make.
Yeah, you're gonna go with Tom Brady, because I said, Tom Brady is almost like another coach in a sense. Yes, he's playing on the field, but he's the conductor. He knows he's got his shit on lock. Especially with how long he's been in the league.
Yeah. So I mean, that's just the theory that I have. I mean, I think that's probably what happened. Bruce ended up getting kicked down to the front office. I don't know if you heard about that. So they didn't fire him completely. He's still got a role, but he's not going to be.
Really?
Yeah. So he's still in the front office, but he's not the coach anymore. So, and that's the thing. Bruce Arians, I would think that this was a lot more likely if he hadn't gone into all the offseason shit. He's like, we're excited for next season. We're really looking for. Bruce seemed really gung ho for next season. He didn't seem like a guy that was, about to hang it up. And he says that it's all about having a good succession plan in place for Tampa, and that's why he timed it now. But who knows? Interesting.
Yeah, I think your theory is probably more likely.
That's what I'm thinking, bud. I mean, you're not going to tell Tom
Bruce,
what to do.
Bruce may have not even known. Maybe he.
I don't think he did. I think Bruce
he's all excited for it, and then all of a sudden they come to him and they're like, "Hey, we're not going to fire you, but we need you to go ahead and retire."
To the front. Yeah, exactly. We're going to boot you
to
down
the front
to
office.
Yeah. But you're not going to be the coach anymore. We're going to make it look good, But you're going to be an executive now, and
I mean, he's old. That's good. You probably
It really is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It's taken on his identity. Yeah, and speaking of coaching news, as we've been reporting on the Brian Flores situation, there had been some momentum about maybe Hugh Jackson joining the suit before, but he didn't actually join. But two coaches have: former defensive coordinator Ray Horton of the Titans, and Steve Wilkes, the former head coach of the Arizona Cardinals before Cliff Kingsbury took over, have joined the suit. And they have alleged, they have added new allegations against the Cardinals, Titans, and Texans. Of these, with Ray Horton's got pretty clear evidence. His situation comes from 2016, when he was the defensive coordinator for the Titans, and Mike Mularkey was the offensive coordinator, and they had just fired their head coach. And the Titans ownership had gone to him, and Mike Mularkey, that is. And Mike Mularkey actually admitted this, the former Titans head coach, in the 2020 podcast, that before conducting all the interviews, the Titans ownership told him he was going to get the head coaching job before they interviewed even the minority candidates. And he said that that's a decision that he's regretted his whole career since then. And, he obviously opened up about it. So Ray Horton obviously has evidence that the NFL conducted, sort of a sham interview for the Titans job, because he was interviewed to satisfy the Rooney Rule, as we've talked about. Steve Wilkes' situation a little bit different. He was fired after one season with the Arizona Cardinals, a 3-13 season. So I mean, it could have been performance based, but
yeah, that sounds a little understandable there. But
yeah, but I mean, the one thing that he does have is that Steve Keim, the Cardinals GM, had a DUI arrest earlier in the offseason. So he wasn't available. He was like suspended for 6 weeks. So for 6 weeks, the head coach didn't have his GM to assist him with stuff. So he was kind of set up to fail, and then Keim gets a 4-year contract extension, and Wilkes gets fired after one season. Whereas the next season they end up hiring Cliff Kingsbury, who goes 5-10-1, and they say that Cliff Kingsbury's well, Wilkes has said that Kingsbury's been given a far longer leash since he's white. So
white.
Interesting point.
I mean, yeah, it could be.
It could be. I mean, but yeah, I mean, I think that they kind of hung him out to dry if he didn't have a GM for 6 weeks. I mean, that's
I agree.
That's over almost half your season right there, and especially for Keim got himself a DUI and got himself a contract extension, and Wilkes got his ass fired, and he's now the Panthers defensive coordinator, but obviously we'll see where that goes. They've joined the Flores suit, so obviously that continues.
Yeah, that'll be a
gain some
ongoing
momentum.
Situation to monitor, see if anything comes of that. Can be interesting to see.
Absolutely.
We have a whole bunch of signings and some contracts to talk about.
We'll go through these real quick. I mean, obviously with free agency wrapping up, there's not. We're running out of the elite players outside of like Tyrann Mathieu and OBJ have pretty much signed. They're really the main ones to watch at this point. There's a few other ones out there. But
I was going to say, I think some of these signings in the amounts, it's just, well, obviously it goes to show what the contracts are going to be like for similar players, like Stephon Diggs, for example. He gets the 4-year, $96 million extension.
Yep.
And I know Terry McLaurin is up, is going to need some kind of contract soon.
Too,
Debo as well. So
also,
I mean, obviously there's lots of players in other teams.
We're talking about DK Metcalf and AJ Brown with the Titans as well. Okay. Yeah, so all those young receivers are coming up.
It'll be interesting to see, what the other contracts end up being. I mean, I imagine for players like Stephon Diggs or Terry McLaurin, this is going to start being the norm.
Yeah.
Did you say $90 million or so
what
for
his
4
money
years.
Was? $96 million.
Stephon Diggs? Yeah, $96 million.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, he had a great season. Buffalo had a great season in general. I mean, but he's really come on with Josh Allen. So, they got rid of Cole Beasley, so he's going to be targeted probably even more, I would assume. But they also Bobby Wagner, who left the Seahawks, staying in the NFC West by signing a 5-year, $50 million deal, which basically it's an incentivized deal, which basically if he hits his incentives, he can become a free agent again after 2 seasons. But he's 31 years old, which normally you'd be like, okay, well, he's an aging linebacker. But he just came off a career-high season where he had 170 tackles. So, I mean, obviously that, age 31 season not playing a factor as he continues to play at a Pro Bowl level. So, the rich getting richer in the Rams, unfortunately.
Yeah, Jesus.
Yeah. So they got Wagner, and they add him to, like, Allen Robinson and, all the other acquisitions that they've made over time. And they're still trying to get OBJ back. So we'll see if they can sign Odell. Speaking of big money deals, Xavier Howard agreeing to a 5-year extension with the Dolphins with $50.69 million in new money, which effectively makes him the highest paid cornerback in the NFL. So coming off a really good season, he's a former second-round draft pick of the Miami Dolphins, and the Dolphins continuing to have a great offseason as they sign him. And lock him down for the next 5 years. So that's a good pickup for them.
Yeah, definitely.
And the former this guy was on the trade block last year with the Colts. They didn't end up trading him, but he did become a free agent and signed with the Houston Texans. Marlon Mack, the former 4th-round pick of the 2017 draft with the Colts. Kind of rose to fame in 2018 when he ran for 900 yards and 9 touchdowns. And then the following season, he had a career high just under 1,100 yards and 8 touchdowns in 14 games. It looked like he was going to be the starter for the Colts moving forward, and then in 2020, first game of the season, he goes out and tears his ACL. And, of course, as you know, that was kind of, Marlon Mack goes down, and then that's when the emergence of Jonathan Taylor started. And he's been tearing it up the last 2 years. So, Marlon Mack staying in the AFC South, going to the Houston Texans, who had one of the most god-awful running games in the NFL.
I was going to say, they definitely could benefit from any running back.
They had Rex Burkhead in there. He was the main guy most of the season.
I don't even remember that fucking name. That's how uneventful it probably was. Jeez. I mean, I never pay attention to the Texans at all. That's literally, it's one of those teams.
Yeah.
Like the AFC, I don't quite pay as much attention.
I know
as the
you're
NFC,
always shitting on the AFC South. One of these days when we actually get fans, these AFC South fans are gonna fucking come after us. Oh, he doesn't even watch AFC South football.
Sorry, man, I don't watch Texans games. I mean, generally when football's on, really, I only usually watch like 2 games and maybe 3, because there's the Washington game, the Niner game, and then like maybe which other one you can catch in between.
Yeah. That's why we have.
Hey, if the Texans had some good highlights to ever watch, I might know something about what's going on with them.
But Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, back when he was on the team, it was a little more.
Yeah,
but they still had a terrible last season last time he played, right?
Yeah, 4-12.
Yeah, so
got Bill O'Brien fired. And then the Saints haven't done much, other than make moves to get under the cap this offseason, but they did re-sign defensive back PJ Williams on a 1-year deal. He's coming off a pretty good season where he had 42 tackles, 3 picks, and 2 sacks in 16 games. So I think he was mainly the Saints nickel back, so third cornerback. So obviously, it's a good move for them to go ahead and re-sign him. And he was one of the top players still available in free agency. As we've mentioned, most of the good ones, I mean, we're free agency was, 3 weeks ago? Almost 4. And, I mean, you see how quick all the good players really got sucked up pretty quick. I mean,
yeah, definitely.
It's a quick process once the free agency starts. It's gotten down to a slow trickle now. And then here was another one of the top remaining players, Calais Campbell. He's coming back to the Ravens on a 2-year, $12.5 million deal. So Calais Campbell, despite being in his late 30s, continues to be an absolute presence on the defensive line. Didn't have a great amount of sacks the last couple years, but I mean he's always a continuous force on the inside of the defensive line.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've got a retirement here for you. Speaking of the Texans, Whitney Merciless, awesome name by the way. Especially for defensive linemen.
That's a sweet name.
Yeah, Whitney Merciless retiring after 10 NFL seasons. Former Houston Texans first-round pick in 2012. He managed to have a pretty solid career with 58 career sacks. Had a career best 12 sack season in 2015. So he's stepping away. Spent his entire career except for 4 games last year with the Packers, with the Texans. So, one of those rare guys that spends pretty much his entire career with one team. Had a solid but not spectacular season. Good player, hanging up the cleats. And
yeah, it's always cool to see those players that stay with one team. I mean, even if it's the Texans.
Yeah. I mean, the Texans, they might be coming up. I mean, I don't have great expectations for the Texans, but I expect that they'll probably win more than 4 games. I mean, Lovie Smith, he's been a head coach 2 different places with Chicago and Tampa Bay. So, I mean, he's definitely a guy that's got plenty of experience, and he says he's moving forward with Davis Mills. So we'll see how it goes.
See how that goes.
I mean, Davis Mills got better as the season went on, so we can hope. And then the last transaction to report on is one of the rare interdivision trades. You don't see these too often because obviously you don't want to trade a player that could potentially help a division rival get better. But the Dolphins are trading, former starting receiver Devontae Parker, so the second Devontae second wide receiver named Devontae to be traded.
Yeah, not Devontae Adams.
Not Devontae Adams this time. I already reported on that, but Devontae Parker and a 5th-round pick being sent to the Patriots in exchange for a 3rd-round selection. So this move is coming, obviously, just a little bit later than a week after Tyreek Hill was acquired from Kansas City. So Miami now no longer needs Devontae Parker. They also, as we reported on earlier, picked up Trent Sherfield and River Craycroft. River Craycraft. I always do that.
I was going to say, I think it's Craycraft.
I always do that. But yeah, they also, so they got some additional receiver help. And obviously they deemed that, it was more worth it to kind of cut his salary and, clear some roster space and get that draft pick. So Parker's a good receiver, though. He's a former 1st-round pick from the 2015 draft. And he's got 2 years left on his deal, which, will convert over to New England. So they'll have him for another 2 years. He has a base salary of about $5.7 million in 2022 and 2023, but he's guaranteed no money over those final 2 seasons. So obviously, if they decide to cut him before a game, which a lot of times the Patriots will acquire a guy and cut him before he ever plays in a game. Bill Belichick's notorious for that shit. But he broke out in 2019. Parker did, with a 72-catch, 1,200-yard, 9-touchdown season. Obviously, since then he hasn't been able to duplicate that success. And over the last 2 years, he's combined to catch 103 passes, 1,300 yards, and 6 scores. So, but Miami's also picked up Jalen Waddle, and last year he was getting a lot of those targets. So he was kind of the secondary option with that. And then obviously with Tyreek, dude was going to at best be a 3rd receiver there.
Yeah.
And let's see here. Oh, Miami also got Cedric Wilson, the former Cowboys receiver. I knew they got another receiver too. So, and Patriots are going to add Parker to their receiving core, which is obviously headlined by Kendrick Bourne, former Niner, also Nelson Aguilar and Jacoby Myers. So another weapon for Mac Jones, young McCorkle Jones, getting another weapon there. So I'm sure that'll help out. And then
Bill trying to remake that great Patriots team.
Yeah,
do it again.
They pretty much got back to being pretty good after just 1 season. So kudos to them, I guess. Bill's the master genius. What's Tom say about Bill in the documentary? Has he gotten to that yet? Has he shit on Bill?
I don't think he shit on him. They talk about like how he's always very critical. Anytime, they could be 14-2 in the season, and he's still going to find some reason.
Of course, Bill's going to be pissed. Bill gets no joy out of life, other than like Bill. I feel like Bill wins a football game and he's happy for like a minute, and then he's like,
ha ha ha, yay.
He's like, dude, we should have converted more 3rd downs. He's like, now that I think about it, he's like, we probably could have won by 20 if we would have converted, more 3rd downs. And
can never please him.
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody, welcome to this week's Commanders Countdown. Not a whole lot of news. There was some very bad news.
Always rough when we have to start the episodes this way. Unfortunately, on Saturday, we lost former Ohio State Buckeyes great and former Washington Redskin first round pick Dwayne Haskins in a tragic accident.
Yeah, definitely some sad news. I know I may have been critical of him in the past in terms of his playing ability on the field, but those kinds of things really aren't worth mentioning when somebody dies randomly, especially something like this. Like,
Exactly.
the Adam Schefter comment that he put out, whether or not the statement is accurate or not, it's really not the point. Like, you don't need to say those kinds of things when something like this happens.
And I have the tweet that Schefter put up before, and then he went and he actually changed his tweet after the fact and took out the the performance based part. But yeah, actually, because this has been a topic on a lot of Washington fans' minds, and just a lot of football fans' minds in general, since this has happened just on Saturday, so just a couple days ago. But I actually went back and watched the footage from his first ever win from 2019 against the Lions. Remember that game when they beat the Lions 19-16, and So that was pretty cool. And then that's like the moment where he got his phone and he was like taking the selfies with the fans after the game. So it's pretty cool to get to like relive that moment, like probably his best like career moment ever. Obviously a promising young career ended too short. Who knows what would have happened in Pittsburgh? Maybe he would have caught on. Obviously the Pittsburgh quarterback room was wide open now with Ben
and he
retiring.
was still so young. I mean, even if he had a bit of a rocky
24.
start in the NFL, I know we're not trying to focus on that, but you never know where he would have, gone. With more time to learn, and he went to another team.
He could have been
had
great.
Some success.
And that's what I was going to say. Some of the throws that he made in that game, like he definitely showed that arm strength. I mean,
he has a good arm. He definitely does.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm sorry. I guess he did. Oh man.
Yeah. And I mean, in this one season, he was legendary at Ohio State. 50 touchdowns to 8 interceptions.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was just an unreal season. And I mean, if
you're going to mention him, I would say that would be the thing to say, like Ohio State Buckeye legend. Like
Buckeye legend.
That's
absolutely.
like the biggest, because that's what I would go with.
Yeah, definitely. But thoughts and prayers go out to his family, and obviously in a very rough time that they're going through.
I'm not sure if we mentioned what the details were.
Oh no, I don't think we did. Yeah.
He was apparently walking down. I think it said he ran out of gas or something in a rental vehicle, and he was trying to cross the highway, and a truck hit him. So.
Yeah. Definitely. I know it was like around 7 a.m., like a little before 7, so it probably was a little bit dark out. So I would imagine that the visibility wasn't good. But I mean, hopefully. Obviously you hate to see something like that. And like I said, at just 24 years old, definitely rough.
Yeah, definitely. And in some other news, really the only other news, DeAndre Carter signs a 1-year contract with the Los Angeles Chargers.
Yeah, real shitty to lose him.
Yeah, upon hearing about it at first, it's doesn't sound ideal, but given the draft prospects this year with how many receivers there are, I imagine that we're going to pick up somebody that's going to take that spot.
That's
so
true.
he did do a lot. He did some good for us, especially on the returns. But it happens. So with the draft, I think that's the right. It's not going to be a detrimental move to us. We're going to get somebody.
Yeah, I would hope so. I just liked his versatility. That they would use him out of the backfield, and he was also a threat as a receiver, and also the special teams aspect.
Yeah.
I mean, he caught a career high last year of 24 passes for 296 yards and 3 touchdowns, and then he added a kick return touchdown, so 4 total touchdowns. He signs a 1-year
that kick return
deal.
touchdown was nice. I remember that one.
Yeah, it was. So the Chargers are getting a weapon, another offensive weapon, when they add him. But I expect, and we'll talk about what Washington might target in the draft here in just a minute. There was one other roster move, not super notable. Probably many of you won't know that he was even on the roster. But DJ Hayden, former Oakland Raider first-round pick of 2013, who spent one game, or was active one game last year for Washington, was released.
I didn't know who he was when he mentioned it to me. I was like, I've never even heard of that dude.
Not a huge shock, considering they've got William Jackson, Kendall Fuller, Benjamin St. Juste, and they might even add another corner. Oh, and Danny Johnson. So those are like the top 4 corners. They might add another corner in the draft. We'll have to see what ends up happening there. Obviously, they've been linked to some corners as well, which we'll get into now, because those are really the only notable moves. So we've got the 11th pick in the draft. So Obviously, there's been a lot of speculation of what they could do with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think a receiver would be a top choice. I don't know if it would necessarily be the first pick we go with. You might just take the best player available, especially on the defensive side. But we definitely need somebody to pair with Terry McLaurin. So I know in one of the first few picks for sure, probably more likely the second pick, it would probably be a receiver. But I could see them even going if a really good receiver is available at 11, they might go after that.
Yeah, I mean, this draft does have a lot of. I mean, you can get a good receiver in the second round in this draft.
Right.
Who's going to be available, because obviously the names that we have here. So assuming, and I'm with you on that. I assume that probably a receiver has to be addressed either with the first or second pick. I personally think that they'll draft a receiver at 11. Obviously don't have any inside information to that. That's just my theory. I think that that's what they could benefit the most from. A defensive player could help them as well. And then they could also make a move on the offensive line. But, if they were to draft a receiver at 11, a couple options that they could go with. Obviously, Chris Olave has been mentioned, and he's out of USC. And, we know Ron likes him because we saw Ron talking to him at his pro day. So, and what Olave's got is he's got speed. This kid ran a 4.2 40. He's a 6 foot, 187 pound guy, so not a super big receiver, but obviously known for being very fast. He would be projected to play as mostly a slot receiver, and the interesting thing about that is if they bring him in, he was actually a teammate of Terry McLaurin's at Ohio State, so Terry's actually been mentioned as saying that he's like a little brother, to him. So.
That could work out with a good team there, the two of them.
You've seen that kind of, the college and pro chemistry work with like Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, and also like Tua and Jalen Waddle. So obviously, it can pay dividends, the chemistry that they have, carrying from the college to the pro game. So Olave's been mentioned as one option. Then obviously we've got Drake London, who Olave's the speed guy. Drake London is obviously the size guy. He's a big possession receiver, which, he could play outside or in the slot. So he doesn't have as much speed. So that's his knock, or, the ability to get separation.
Right.
But he, like I said, he's going to be good at coming down with those 50-50 balls, those jump ball situations. He can turn a 50-50 ball situation into a 70-30 advantage for the offense. And, he can just dominate the catch point. Because he's got fucking huge arms, and so what he lacks in speed, he makes up for in other ways. So he's been another guy that they've mentioned.
Yeah, it just depends what the team is looking to do. If they want to keep adding speed, like to match with Terry, or they want to get somebody that can, take down the contested catches more like that. I think they would be better off going with more all-around speed, just to have a similar weapon as Terry, in another area on the field, so they can't just lock down Terry, but. It'll be interesting to see, because they're definitely going to take a receiver at some point. So it'll be interesting to see who they take first, whether it be at 11 or it be in the second round, or whatever their next pick is.
They could also take Garrett Wilson, who's also from Ohio State. Ohio State had a bunch of really good receivers. Now, Garrett Wilson, also very fast. Not quite as fast as Olave, but he's not as good of a route runner. So he's seen as needing a little bit more polish to be... a pure NFL receiver, but obviously he's got that speed, and speed's something that you can't teach. So he would be another option that they could talk about potentially if they were to take a receiver at 11. A lot of these guys would probably be gone by the second round, but obviously, like we said, this receiver class is super deep. So there's going to be receivers all throughout, probably the first 3 or 4 rounds that you can get a pretty good player.
Right.
And, they could go a different route. Maybe they don't.
They could go quarterback,
They could go quarterback.
Obviously is always an option. But I don't know. I don't see it happening necessarily.
Yeah,
I think they're going to go with Carson Wentz this season.
Unless
we got Taylor as a backup. Like we just don't. It doesn't seem like a good draft to make that move.
You would think if they really trust Wentz, like Ron's saying that they do, then they probably won't. Right. I mean, there are going to probably be some quarterbacks there. obviously we'll mention real briefly. There's Kenny Pickett. I think Kenny Pickett, I'll go on record to say I think Kenny Pickett's the best and most NFL-ready quarterback in the draft. Now, I don't know that he'll necessarily be the first taken, but I think that if you had to play a quarterback opening day, I think Kenny Pickett's the most ready. He's a 5-year starter at Pitt, so, I mean, he's got a lot of playing time. I mean, he's a good pocket passer with pretty good mobility. He's got a solid arm. I think that, personally, he's going to be gone at 11. I think he's going to go number 6 to the Panthers. I think the Panthers are going to look to replace Sam Darnold. And you know, I think Kenny Pickett's going to be the guy there, but he could be a guy that they're interested in. And then also
Malik Willis.
Malik Willis, yeah, he'd be the other one that I could see them being interested in, and he's got, you know, that rare combination of rushing and you know, rocket arm ability, so he can do a lot of good things for you.
Yeah, he needs to be polished a little bit more. I wouldn't say he's quite as ready to start.
He's not ready. Yeah, he'd probably have to sit, and that's where you know, maybe like you said, if you have Wentz in there, and maybe if you don't completely trust, like I said, I don't think that's a move you make unless you're not completely sold on Wentz. I think if Ron really thinks that Carson's going to be the franchise quarterback, then I don't think they're taking a quarterback. I mean, maybe you take a guy in the 3rd or 4th or 5th round as like a developmental guy, but I mean.
I don't even necessarily think that he thinks Carson's going to be the franchise quarterback, but even if he thinks he's at least solid for the next year, you know, in order to draft a quarterback first like that, they have to make sure, or to try and trade up, whatever, it has to be a player that you really, really think you want, like for whatever reason it is. And none of the quarterbacks in this draft seem to have that, you know, X factor where it's like, you know, oh, well, we definitely need this guy. So because of that, I don't think quarterbacks are going to only go to teams that are really desperate, and Washington isn't now that we have Carson Wentz. So
and I would agree with that. I mean, even like I said, even Kenny Pickett being the most polished of the quarterbacks, he's not like a gotta have situation. And not like last year, Trevor Lawrence was the clear defined number 1 pick. You know, it's like obviously everybody knew going in that Jacksonville was going to take him.
Yeah,
and obviously they could go offensive line as well. And there's a big ass Kenyon Green, the offensive guard out of Texas A&M. Obviously, we know Andrew Norwell is going to fill one of the 2 guard spots because they lost Sheriff and Flowers. So with the loss of those 2, you needed 2 new guards. You got Andrew Norwell, and you need to replace one more. So maybe you go offensive guard. And
yes, that is true. That could be the only the other position I see them going early, and probably not, you know, first round. That seems unlikely, but you know, the following picks.
Well, Kenyon Green was the best ranked interior lineman in the SEC. You know, which is where Alabama plays, and you know, like all those insanely LSU plays, all those insanely good teams play that send 10 to 15 players a year to the NFL. So. I mean, he's a 325-pound mauler, but he also, what makes him interesting is he's made starts at every single offensive line position except center last year. So he started 4 different positions. So that's got to catch attention, you know, for his versatility alone. So maybe Washington looks at Kenyon Green out of Texas A&M there.
Yeah, I guess that's really could be just as likely as a receiver. Because I mean, you got to protect Carson. You can't protect the quarterback. It doesn't really matter what receivers you have. So I mean, they could do that first, even over a receiver, if he's really that good. If he's the best player that's available, and they do need offensive line, I could definitely see that.
Yeah. Now, one other position that we'll mention that actually a couple more. So there's also the possibility that they try to go best player available, and if he's available, you'd have to take a look at Kyle Hamilton, the safety out of Notre Dame, obviously the best safety in this year's draft. Now, Washington's got Bobby McCain, so Cam Curl, so they've got good safeties already, but obviously in losing Landon Collins, you could add additional depth, and Kyle Hamilton might be too good of a player to pass up, especially for Ron with his defensive pedigree. Now, he might be the best player in this whole draft. He's regarded in some draft classes as the top overall player. I don't think he's going to go first overall because Jacksonville has more need at edge rusher. I think they're going to take Aiden Hutchinson first overall. Mm-hmm. But, he might be one of the best, at least one of the top 3 best players in this draft. I mean, he's got good size. He's 6'4", 220. So he can not only cover, but he can also play, play run defense and play along the line of scrimmage and really just clean the running back's clock if they need him to do that. I mean, this guy basically allowed 1 touchdown his entire college career in coverage, and he has the third highest cover grade of any of the Power 5 safeties. So, yeah, I mean, maybe they look at adding another safety to the defense. That could be another move I see.
I think he'd probably go before 11 if he's really that good of a player. Somebody in the top 10 is probably going to take him.
Could be. I mean, unless teams get really like quarterback hungry, and like a lot of teams trade in to get their quarterbacks, which I could see. I could see Atlanta maybe trying to move in and get a quarterback a little bit sooner if they need to do that. And then the last one I'll mention just quickly, they could also go. I mean, this one's cooled down a little bit because there's talk that Cole Holcomb's just gonna remain at middle linebacker. So they might not go linebacker this early. But there's also Devin Lloyd, linebacker out of Utah, who's a very highly rated player out of the Power 5, second highest graded linebacker. And he's got really good sideline-to-sideline speed. And he had 110 tackles, which led the Utah defense in 2021. And obviously he can be a good pass rushing linebacker as well, because he led the Pac-12 in he led the Pac-12 with 8 sacks as a linebacker. Sorry. Anyway.
Damn, that's a lot for a linebacker.
Yeah. So he had a really good season as far as that goes. So they could potentially move him. I mean, he played inside mostly in college, but as we mentioned with them wanting to play Cole Holcomb in the middle or as the Mike, what they call it, they could potentially move him outside if they were to draft him, because he's proven that he's got the versatility to play inside or outside. So that could be another way. And then they've also been in a recent mock draft that I saw linked to cornerback Derek Stingley out of LSU. Stingley is a man coverage specialist. 56% of his snaps came out of press coverage. So and he allowed a completion percentage of 41% in college. He was injured. That kept him from participating in combine drills, but he was healthy for his pro day, and he put together pretty impressive pro day. And he probably wouldn't start in Washington since they have Kendall Fuller and William Jackson III, but he could definitely add depth along with like St. Juste and come in on potential like known passing downs and provide man coverage. So that's also been a player that they've been linked to as well. So really a lot of positions mentioned in there. Everything from wide receiver to offensive guard to quarterback to linebacker, safety, cornerback. So
yeah, it's like draft speculation is kind of like it's one of those things. It's like, well, yeah, it could really be any number of things.
Yeah. Personally, I would have to say I see them taking either Kenyon Green or Olave at that position. That's who I have them taking.
I would agree. I would say the same. Yeah, either the offensive guard or the receiver for sure. It's probably going to be one of those two, if they're assuming that either of those are still available at 11.
Right, and obviously you've got to base that off of where the other 10 what the other 10 teams do in front of you, and you may have a guy in mind, and maybe that changes.
That's why like the speculation thing is just kind of like, man, no idea how it's going to play out. They might have this player in mind, and someone takes them the pick before him,
and that's why teams will usually put like they have a lot of teams on their board, at least 5 to 10 teams or 5 to 10 players on their board in case that happens. So yeah,
definitely.
But I mean, let us know who you think that the Commanders might take in the comments. I mean, who you want to see them take, because we'd be interested to know your thoughts as well.
Yep, and we will find out in the coming weeks and see how it goes. Get more and more excited for the next season, and then hopefully not get let down this time.
Yeah, absolutely. We're hoping not.
That's about everything we got for you this week. See if there's any news over this next week. If not, we do have the draft coming up, and we'll definitely be covering that.
Yep, draft's about 2 weeks away now, folks, so we're getting close.
And remember to like and subscribe. See you next time.
All right. Thanks for joining us this week on the Niners News Update, Faithful.
What's up, everybody? Thanks for joining us. Have some big news about a longtime Niner.
We do. All-time leading Niners rusher and third all-time leading rusher, Frank Gore, has finally announced his retirement. So, we definitely want to take a few moments to congratulate Frank Gore. Obviously, one of the best to ever do it. Yeah, I mean, he had an outstanding career. Obviously, like we said, third all-time, 16,000 yards, even. Finished, right on 16,000.
Really, it's really even 16,000 yards.
16,000 right on the dot.
That's badass.
I guess he didn't want to fuck with that. He's like,
That would help me. Like, I don't have OCD, but like, I guess everyone has some mild form.
Yeah.
I like a nice even numbers. Like, that would make me so happy if I was him to be like, oh my god, an even 16,000. Like, fuck that. I'm retiring.
Yeah, exactly. So Frank Gore, he has elected to sign a 1-day contract with the team that drafted him, the San Francisco 49ers, best team in the NFL. Obviously a little bit biased there, but so he is signing and retiring a Niner. Unfortunately, it wasn't in an active capacity, which would have liked to have seen him play in.
Yeah.
But I was kind of hoping that he would have come back last year, late on our run to the Super Bowl, and at least gotten to play in a few of those games. But unfortunately, no such luck. But nevertheless, still an outstanding career. It was. Frank Gore has been quoted as saying that we're still trying to figure out when I'm going through my 1-day contract to sign to do my retirement. I told Jed York I always want to be a Niner, so we're working on that right now. So Gore hasn't played since the 2020 season when he was with the New York Jets, and he tallied 742 total yards and 2 touchdowns. So, still at the age, I'm trying to think, like, how old was he when he played with the Jets?
I think he's like
it was
37
when he was playing with the Jets, yeah. 37. So at age 37, still picking up over 700 yards and scoring a couple touchdowns, albeit on the awful Jets, which almost makes it more impressive because
I was gonna say, that kind of makes it even more impressive that he still did that well. Like,
yeah. So obviously the Jets were his 5th team. He was drafted by the Niners in the third round of the 2005 draft, and spent.
That was the Alex Smith draft, wasn't it?
Yep, we got Alex in the first round and then him in the third. So that was a hell of a draft for us. So Frank spent the first 10 years of his career in San Francisco, rushing for at least 1,000 yards in 8 of those 10 seasons. So pretty much all but 2 of them, being named to 5 Pro Bowls. And then he's 38 years old now, but he's also played with the Colts, the Miami Dolphins, the Buffalo Bills, and the New York Jets. So obviously a hell of a career for Mr. Frank Gore. Obviously, there's a lot of debate on whether Frank Gore is a Hall of Famer. I think, hell yes, Frank Gore is definitely a Hall of Famer. I think that there's no doubt about it. I mean, you look at, there's 2 guys in front of him. It's Emmitt Smith and Walter Payton. Both of those guys are absolutely Hall of Famers. So
yeah, I don't know why that would even be a question. That's insane.
The only argument that some people have is that sometimes, like, it took, like, with the amount of time that, like, he played for, and like a lot of those.
That's also kind of impressive though that he played that long. And,
exactly, and I think what makes Frank Gore a Hall of Famer, I mean, not alone, but I don't know if you knew this, but coming out of Miami University in college, I actually saw this national championship game that he was playing in. He tore both of his ACLs, and that's why he fell. He was a first-round pick, but that's why he fell to the 3rd round, and we were able to get him because we took Alex Smith in the 1st round, and he wasn't. People didn't even know if he would ever suit up and actually play football, and obviously,
he had the career he did.
He did more than just play football. He had a Hall of Fame career. So
I'm definitely happy to see him do this 1-day contract thing to retire as a Niner. That's always
absolutely that's
cool,
badass.
Cool to see that. He has he's always a Niner. That's where he started out. Even though he did eventually move on, you can tell he's always felt truly like he's a Niner.
Yeah, absolutely. He has, and even last year when he was like, I want to come back to the Niners, that's where he's always felt at home. So
Yeah.
obviously, you know, I love Frank Gore, man. He's one of my all-time favorites. And
Yeah, he's badass.
what's next for Frank the Tank? What's next for the Inconvenient Truth? You know, so I mean, he's made some announcements. Obviously, he's set to make his professional boxing debut on May 14th in Jackson, Mississippi, on Gamebred Promotions card.
Wait, didn't this already happen? Why do I feel like
it did happen to a
yeah?
point? So we're getting to that. So yeah,
And didn't he get his ass like beat pretty bad, or am I thinking of a different fight?
It wasn't. He lost on split. Well, yeah. So anyway, what ended up happening was he fought in a previous fight to NBA player Deron Williams in an exhibition fight, and he lost in a split decision. But yeah, it didn't look very good. He didn't account very well.
All right.
But
so
this is going to be.
I do remember this then.
Yeah. So he is going to have another fight. Now this fight is going to take place on May 14th, which ironically is Frank Gore's 39th birthday. So hopefully Frank can kick some ass for his birthday. His opponent has yet to be announced, but it is going to be streamed on Fight TV, or FITE. So tune in and watch it, everybody, if you get the chance to watch Frank hopefully go and, you know, account well for himself.
Do better this time.
Win. Even if he doesn't win, at least, you know, like, have a good accounting for yourself, Frank. Go out there and look good. And you know, he's also been reported. There's been mutual interest between him and Jed York of him potentially joining the Niners front office in a potential scouting role. So obviously big things happening for Frank. So congratulations, you deserve it, Frank. Enjoy retirement, buddy. Or boxing. Doesn't really sound like he's just retiring.
Yeah, you would think after being a running back in the NFL for that long, maybe give your body a little break, but nah, apparently not.
It's like I'm good, man. I'm good. Frank Gore seems like just one of those guys that's like, I'll sleep when I'm dead. You know, he just seems like one of those kinds of guys. And I was like, all right. That's why he ran for, like, what's 16,000? That's like a mile, isn't it? Or like, that's a couple miles.
A mile is 5,000 feet, so yeah, it'd be about a mile.
He's run for some miles in the NFL.
It'd be it's almost a mile basically because it's 3 feet to a yard. So.
Attaboy. Good for you, Frank. And other notable Niners news. This guy's back in the news. Our former first-round draft pick, Reuben Foster. You might recognize that name because he had a brief cup of coffee on the Redskins at one point. He was signed, but former linebacker Reuben Foster, who can't get out of his own way, has either been, you know, arrested and suspended or injured since 2018 and hasn't played a snap since 2018. But he's got a visit this week with the Dolphins. He visited the Dolphins on Friday. He's yet to be signed, but definitely the first step in him making a comeback. So we'll have to see if he can catch on. Obviously, I remember when Jay Gruden brought him into Washington, and he got injured right away in the first practice, and just really didn't do anything. But I mean, he was a guy that through his first 2 seasons played in 16 games and showed some promise. But obviously, his off the field issues, which he later got acquitted of, you know, or maybe he paid somebody off. Who knows? We're not to say, but. Yeah, he got those charges dismissed and seemed like he was going to make a comeback, and didn't happen. So, interestingly enough, obviously the Dolphins are coached by Mike McDaniel, who's the former Niners assistant. So, Mike McDaniel giving former Niner player an opportunity there. So
that's probably part of it, I would imagine.
Probably.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Knows him personally, and maybe he's doing better in life now.
He's giving him the old. I'm going to call it what we call the Tebow treatment. Just bringing him in, just brushing elbows with him. It's like bringing in an old friend. And speaking of old Niners potentially trying to get their way back into the NFL, we wouldn't be doing our due diligence if we didn't mention this man potentially trying to make his return to the NFL. It was a week from Saturday that he threw at the University of Michigan's spring game. Colin Kaepernick was throwing in front of NFL scouts. Obviously, this is his second designated workout now that he's thrown in front of NFL scouts. And obviously, the notable correlation here is that Michigan is coached by his former head coach in San Francisco, Jim Harbaugh. So obviously Harbaugh extending the invitation to come. I don't know if you saw the picture. We'll put it up on the screen of Harbaugh and Kaepernick holding the Michigan jersey. Did you see that? Obviously, Kaepernick.
I'm not sure if I did, actually.
Yeah, Kaepernick. We'll put it on the screen.
I saw the footage of him throwing. I remember I saw the video,
yeah.
but I don't know if I saw that.
He looked pretty good. Threw to some Michigan receivers. He looked pretty good. So he threw for about 15 minutes, and the workout was conducted when he uncorked a deep pass, and then embraced Harbaugh, and then after the workout, he made his case to NFL ready or NFL quarterback needy teams, and said that, and I quote, "I can help make you a better team. I can help you win games." Kaepernick told Jenna Troutman, when asked what his message to prospective clubs was, "I know right now the situation likely won't allow me to come in and step right into a starting role. I know I'll be able to work my way into that, though, and show that very quickly." So definitely a little bit of a change of mentality where he was like, I'm only going to accept a starting role. Now he's understanding that, hey, I haven't played football in 6 years. Maybe I wouldn't come in as an immediate starter if somebody brought me in. Which
is
if
good.
He's going to come in,
for him to realize that.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's fair. I don't think that after 6 years you can expect to give this guy the keys to the kingdom. Now, if he earns it, absolutely. And he can be a starting quarterback. I believe that 100%. Can he still? I don't know. But, that remains to be seen.
That remains to be seen. Yeah, exactly.
But, I mean, I personally saw the extravaganza that Colin Kaepernick, he set the league on fire. And, I mean, obviously he hasn't played since the 2016 season when he started to protest the social injustice and police brutality by kneeling during the anthem. And he's been unsigned since. Let's see here.
Yeah, him kneeling really pissed off a lot of people. I mean, a lot of people, there's people that liked it and people that didn't, but it seemed just a little too why was it so controversial? Like, Jesus, man. People got so worked up about it.
Yeah, I really didn't ever see what the big deal about. I mean, I guess teams will say that it's a distraction, but not really. I mean, I don't think.
Yeah.
What I saw.
Just a small thing, and a lot of it was misunderstood because people were like, "Oh, it's disrespecting the military." It's like, well, dude, it has nothing to do with that. But it got so blown up, and the fact that he can't play, no team wants to allow him to even try to play because of that is definitely not fair. So.
Yeah.
Hopefully he gets a shot somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, it would be interesting. I'd like to at least, like I said, I mean, every team has a 90-man off-season roster. And, you can sign these guys for, he hasn't played in 6 years. You can sign him to the most minimal contract. You could give him, $950,000 to bring him in as a camp arm and at least see what he's got. I just don't think a lot of the teams want the connotation of being the first. A lot of teams don't want to be the first for the wrong reasons, if it's depending on what it's the first to do. I think a team's real concerned about being the first to bring him in, A lot of teams, I think, are interested in it, but I just don't think they know how to approach it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's somewhat hypocritical for the way he was treated by the NFL. And then the teams that may be interested, they might be nervous because they're like, well, it's not just up to them. They are part of the NFL, and they have to deal with the commissioner and all of that. So
well, the NFL
probably
has come
nervous.
Out, they've apologized to him openly and said that they were wrong. But obviously that's
right. I know they've said that, but
far too little. Yeah, exactly. Whether you actually.
It's one of those things. Like, how genuine was that? It's like, they were doing that because they had to, really. But does he have a job at this point? No. Maybe he's just really not that great. But the videos I have seen of him throwing, he looks like he could at least be a backup. At very least.
I mean, we'll just just in closing here. So I mean, he's 34 now, but he hasn't taken football punishment in 6 years. So obviously that's been, and he's kept himself in good shape, as we've discussed. In his NFL career, he completed just a hair under 60% of his passes, threw 72 touchdowns to 30 interceptions. And let's see. And then when he was asked in the same interview if he could still compete at an NFL level. Kaepernick was, he was very positive that he could. He said, absolutely, we can still get out there and sling it. Really getting out here today for the exhibition was to be able to show that I could do that. It's one of the questions that my agent kept getting was, well, it's been 5 years. Can he still play? So we wanted to make sure that we come out and show everyone I could still play, still throw it, and really looking forward for an opportunity for the door to open, to just have it be a pathway to be able to get back in there and get a starting job and lead them to a championship. So he's definitely, on this championship thing.
Yeah, you got some lofty goals there, buddy. But I appreciate the drive, though. But
that's what he says is the main goal for wanting to get back to the NFL, is because he wants to win the Super Bowl. And I mean, he got really close. I mean, he was within one overthrow in the end zone on a fade.
That's probably why he's so he's probably like, I need redemption, man.
Yeah, I mean, but we'll have to see. We'll have to see whether it happens. I think that he's going to have to work his way back as a backup if a team did give him a chance, but sounds like he's ready to do that now, so we'll see if he gets that opportunity. And then just in other less pressing news, just a couple of roster moves. The Niners hosted a former Colt edge rusher, Kamiko Toure, who could add potential defensive line depth. He was hosted earlier this week, but left without a contract. So remains to see if he ends up getting signed. The Niners did end up making a couple of signings, though, this week. We brought in a couple of new wide receivers. I don't know if you heard about this, but we brought in 2 wide receivers this week. And we re-signed another defensive lineman. We re-signed Maurice Hurst, who we got from the Raiders, last season. So he was re-signed. He was hurt for a big portion of last year, but bringing him back in. And also, the 2 receivers we brought in are Malik Turner and Marcus Johnson.
Where are they from?
So Malik Turner recently played with the Dallas Cowboys. Last year, he played in 14 games and caught 12 passes for 149 yards and a career-high 3 touchdowns. So 3 touchdowns on 12 catches, that's pretty good production. He's catching touchdowns on 25% of his targets there. Or
didn't get utilized a whole lot, but that might be because they didn't have a need for him. So.
Yeah, obviously, as you know, the Cowboys had Michael Gallup, Amari Cooper, and C.D. Lamb, and Cedric Wilson. So he was at best their 4th receiver. So I'm not surprised he wasn't getting a lot of looks. I know a lot of that work that he got was in the 56-point blowout against, unfortunately, you guys, was when he got a lot of that work. But yeah, moving on from that shit. But the other one was so he's a big guy. So he's more of both of these guys are over 6 feet. So pretty good sized receivers. Now Marcus Johnson, he's more of a speed guy. He ran a 4.340 back in 2016 at the Combine. And he comes over from, trying to remember what team he was with last. It was, I want to say it was was it the Titans? Yeah, it was the Titans. I thought it was the Titans. I should have just gone with my first thought. But yeah, last year he played in 7 games with the Titans. And he caught 9 passes for 160 yards. Good for a 17.8 yard per catch average. So definitely a good. And then the year before that, he caught 14 passes. Good for 255 yards. Good for an 18.2 yard per catch average with the Colts. So what that tells me is he's a deep threat. And he's probably a move that's brought in with the expectation of Trey being the starter and us probably going to be throwing the ball down the field further. So he's also notable for being a kick return guy, as last year he had, what was it? It was 30, I don't know where I was getting that. No, he had 9 kick returns for 179 yards last year with Tennessee. So a guy that has some versatility that could also play special teams as a returner. Although we brought in Ray McLeod, so I don't think that he'll be the return guy. I think Ray is going to be handling our kickoff and punting return duties. But a couple of moves to bolster the depth chart. And obviously, as we discussed, I think it was last week, we lost Richie James. So one of those guys probably going to help fill that role. And, we could still draft a receiver. That's something that's been talked about as well. We have the 61st pick in the draft. It's being talked. I think at this point, the foregone conclusion is the Niners are either going to take a corner, a receiver, or potentially an edge rusher. Obviously, picking at 61, a lot of the elite players are going to be gone at that point. But we're still 2 weeks from the draft. Obviously, we covered some of the players that the Commanders might target, but next week on the Niners News Update, we'll cover some of the potential players that the Niners might target at 61. But that does it for all the Niner-related news this week. Like and subscribe if you're not already, and join us next week.
Join us next week. Thanks, everyone.
And that's going to do it this week for the Extra Point Show. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. If you're not already, make sure that you like and subscribe and follow us on all of the social media platforms. And check out our other video clips, like the Niners News Update.
And the Commanders Countdown.
That's right. See you next week, everybody.